Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CoROM podcast. This is where academic medicine meets remote, austere, and resource-limited areas. Every Friday, we drop a new podcast, and we have 4 of us in the faculty that have a week each month to create the podcast and talk about things that we're passionate about. Today is the 11th of November. Just random that it was my turn to drop a podcast. And instead of discussing medical things, instead of discussing things about the college and other things that I'm passionate about, because it's 11th of November, I asked our faculty who have served in various military organizations in different countries if they would like to discuss today, 11 November, Remembrance Day, and how it pertains to them, what their thoughts, what their feelings are every time November 11 comes around. For me, military service was a catalyst. It was a jumping off. It was a trampoline for my life and my direction. My high school secondary education was bumbling along at best. I graduated with 1.1 D average, which barely qualified. In fact, I still believe that my school faked some of my grades just to get me out, just to get me through and away. I just did not do well, and I bumbled along a bit after that, working various jobs until I found out what a police officer was, deputy sheriff was, and then I spent 2 years getting everything in place to go to the sheriff's academy. And then being a cop, I went through the academy, got on with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department in California, and as it was, my field training officer on day one out of the academy was a Green Beret who spent time in Vietnam and then got out and then became a deputy sheriff of San Bernardino County. So the first 120 hours you have to work with a field training officer. So mine was a Green Beret, and I just heard so many stories about service. And it was 9 months after I earned my badge that I turned my badge in to Captain Bishman. I went to him and said, it was a tough decision. I worked so hard for this. Turned in my badge, and he said, well, what are you doing? And I'm joining the Army to be SF. And he's like, another one. So there's tons of people going through the academy and then turning in their badge and joining the military. So for me, the military was where I found myself, and I learned so much about who I was and what my capabilities were and what I could do, how I could serve my community, and how I could make the world a better place with me in it. And instead of being selfish, it turned for me, it turned my reality outwards into the community. And community is how you live or die in survival and in any type of civilization. It's the community that you're with is what makes a difference. How do you separate yourselves out from chaos? And it's only through discipline and community and selflessness and service that separates us from chaos. And every 11 November, I look inward again. This is 35 years after I joined, and spent 10 years in the Green Berets, and got injured, got out. But every 11 November for me is looking at myself and my path and how it went from the 80s, being a cop in the 1980s, to serving in the 90s, and then being a disabled veteran for the last 22 years since I've been out of the Army, and how I must continue to serve, how I must better the community I am in, because this is what I learned from the military. This is what the Army did for me. And it doesn't have to be the Army. Not everyone has to go through what I did. You can be smarter than me and learn how to serve the community without having to go through the crucible of military service. People who are better than me and smarter than me could get to where I am now without having to go through the Army. But for me, I was such a knuckle dragger and blinkered. And in Ireland we say touched, just not the quickest one in the bunch. Come on, I graduated with a D average, and to take that history and create something where I can get to a point where I'm leading a college, where I founded a nonprofit, and now I have 20 or 22 faculty who are following me. Some are MD PhDs, and even the ones who aren't doctors, they're leaders in their field. They're passionate, they're motivated, and I look around to all these people following me, and I'm like, what? Wow. Why I'm humbled. Why follow me? Why agree to serve in this community that we created, this college, this CoROM, College of Remote and Offshore Medicine? Why are you willing to create this and to make the world a better place with your service to our community? And it's humbling. And this, for me, only came from the military service. So on 11 November, I send gratitude, I send appreciation, and I nod my head to all those who have gone through the crucible, who have given the selfless sacrifice. So this is why I am asking my faculty who have served to be introspective on what 11 November means to them, what service means to them, what their military experience did to change them, to better them, and as well as looking back at the lineage of military service. All of this is part of the remembrance of people who have fallen for us to create this community, this civilization, this freedom that we feel, that we see today in 2022 on 11 November on Remembrance Day. So with me is Tim Cranton. Tim Cranton works at the college for the bachelor's degree program. He's a year one subject matter expert. Tim, what does Remembrance Day mean for you?
I guess it's all in the word, really. Remembrance. It's a time of reflection. It's an opportunity for me to reflect on my military service and look at the time I spent during conflict. But I guess I look at it in terms of kind of peacetime as well as wartime. And it's about remembering the people that I served with. Unfortunately, some of those people aren't here today. And I guess it's those in particular that we tend to think about. It's the people that have passed or if they've made, as they say, the ultimate sacrifice. Arguably, I've been lucky and I'm here to tell the tale. And I feel it's my job or an obligation to pass on their story so that it's worthwhile. The effort and the sacrifice is worthwhile, and it's a time to share that with other people, so that legacy is passed on, so that understanding and the remembrance is passed on. I think that's really important. Yeah, from a personal perspective, it's important that people are remembered, and people don't forget what these people, our friends, our family, relatives. My grandfather, he served during the Great War, World War II. So it's a time of reflection for me personally, for my grandfather, who arguably was a war hero. He was shot and survived. I actually have possession of his Bible that he carried with him, and he during the he was in Africa. He was part of the Africa Corps, and he was kind of one of the logistics guys driving trucks, fuel trucks, ammunition trucks everywhere. He was in Tobruk. He would have been in North Africa, Egypt, all over. And when he was shot, he had his kind of not ration book, his service book, like ID book in his pocket, and the bullet passed through the ID book, and I think he had a tin, or he had something else in his pocket as well as his roll-up cigarettes or something similar. Anyway, to cut a long story short, arguably it lessened the severity of the injury, but I have his service book with the hole in it, with the bullet hole.
That's fantastic.
So yeah, in terms of memorabilia, I have those items, and they're pretty special to me. I actually have his medals as well. a couple of years ago, for my birthday, my father gave me my grandfather's medals after my mum had passed away, and and they'd been kind of mounted, and they were all on ribbons, fresh ribbons, and I'm looking forward. Actually, I'm due to leave my place of work over the next few days. And next weekend, next Sunday, I'm going to a Remembrance Day parade in Prague. So I'm part of the first Prague Scouts group. I'm one of the Scout leaders, and talking about remembrance, we feel that it's important for our younger people um, to know and understand kind of what happened during that time, and why we do what we do, why we have this act of remembrance. And there's a very close relationship between the Czechs and the British, especially when it comes to the Battle of Britain. Czech pilots gave their lives for our country as well. So there's a very close relationship. So as a scout group, we'll be going to the Remembrance Day parade, and I hope for the first time I will have the opportunity to wear my grandfather's medals. So I'm really looking forward to that.
That's fantastic.
I haven't been able to do that since COVID. For the last couple of years, we haven't been able to have a parade. So this will be a really good opportunity again to remember. But at the same time, I hope I'll have the opportunity as well to share that with the younger people in our scout group. I'm sure they'll have a few questions about medals, etc. I have a few service medals of my own that I can wear, and from the British military, and I have an award from the US military as well, which will be nice. So I hope I can share the stories kind of with them. And it's not so much stories; it's an account of kind of who I've been in the past. Sometimes people look at you, and if they don't know you or have never spoken to you, they'll never really understand who you are. Maybe what you've been, and like I said, it's a responsibility as an ex-serviceman to pass on the legacy, the stories, and so that people don't forget, and people understand why we've kind of done what we've done, and hopefully, again, for the greater good, made a difference. So yeah, remembrance for me, I guess it runs deep. It's multi-tiered. From a personal perspective, from my time in the British Army, time I spent in war zones after my military service.
That's right. You were in Ukraine earlier this year.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been going backwards and forwards to Ukraine, providing humanitarian help since 2014, in the form of medical training, as well as delivering essential medical supplies. But I remember after the Gulf War, I went back out to Kuwait and Iraq, as again a part of a humanitarian effort, clearing landmines and doing ordnance disposal as well. So I kind of did my military service. I was there during the war itself, and then after the war, I think a year or so later, I left the army and I went back out to Kuwait and Iraq again to help people that have become victim of it. I guess the politics we can never really understand and go into, but it's about the people that kind of get caught up in the middle, and our job is there to protect them ultimately. So it's about not forgetting them as well. I think that's important too.
Good stuff. Any other final comments on the thoughts of your service?
I think, like I said, like we've discussed in conversations previously, arguably my military service shaped the person that I am. I wouldn't be who I am, I don't think, without my military service. I spent some time in the fire brigade when I left the army, kind of in between, and I remember my interview, my final interview before I would go to a station and get my training. And it turns out that one of the interviewing officers was ex-3 para. And I spent quite a bit of time with 3 para in Northern Ireland and what have you. And I was the battalion medic for a while. And it was like, oh, hello, didn't realize you were coming. And of course, do you know so-and-so? Do you remember this guy? Yeah. Were you in Northern Ireland? Yeah, I was at these dates, etc., etc. So we're talking about our military service because we kind of knew the same people, and the HR person had to call a halt to the interview because she was concerned that it was going to be a biased. But
Kind of old boys club.
it was
Yeah.
a little bit, but it's kind of funny at the time. But in the same respect, I've met some people in some random places. I remember meeting a guy that I was on active service with. I think I was in a Sanger with him, like on sentry duty at one point, and it was in a tea shack. It was in a tea shack on a ship, and it was like, I know you, I know you, and it was like, wow, takes us back, and then you pull up a sandbag, and then and then you end up, takes you back. And I think that's another thing for me is like all of the guys that I did my time with, you're lifelong friends. That's it. You could not speak to each other for years, but when you do speak to each other, it's like the last time you saw each other was yesterday. And I think that's an important thing to remember: the brotherhood, the sisterhood, the family that goes with
Camaraderie.
military service.
Yeah.
Definitely, you never forget that, and I think it's something you never lose. It's a very special thing.
I find it interesting, the instant camaraderie when you find someone you've never met before in your life, but you chewed the same dirt somewhere and you
Yep.
just have instant
Yeah,
friendship. Yeah.
we've shared the same misery, but in the same time we've shared the same victory too. And yeah, it's an experience that you can both relate to. I have lifelong friends from my military service, and I have certainly have no regrets. I would definitely do my time again. I'm kind of jealous. I have a friend of mine. He's now a colonel in the U.S. military. He's commanding combat medic training uh, in San Antonio, Texas.
Yeah, Fort
And
Sam.
yeah, and yeah, it's it's amazing to watch this guy's career and see where he is. And every now and then I get some feedback and I get pictures of the guys that he's now training, and I'm kind of, wow, if what I would do to be able to do that again. I'm jealous, but at the same time, I'm proud that the legacy is being carried on, and that these guys are there, and these are medics. They're genuinely there to care for people, to look after the person to the left and to the right, but not just their military brothers and sisters, civilians and stuff. They do an awful lot nowadays with humanitarian aid and disasters that the military goes for. They don't just fight battles; they do some very good things for very good reasons all over the world, and I think that gets forgotten a bit sometimes too. So it's all about looking after the person that can't defend themselves, and that's really good to see that legacy is being carried on.
Thanks, Tim, for your thoughts on today's Remembrance Day, and look forward to chatting with you again.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity.
This evening, I'm with Vish Rajan. He is the associate lecturer and in charge of year 3 of our bachelor's degree program, and he's currently doing his doctorate with a Doctor of Health Studies with our college. And I invited him on to talk a little bit about his service. So, Vish, tell me about yourself and about your service.
Hi, Aebhric. So, for everybody, my name is Vish, and I graduated from the National Defense Academy in India. I joined at the young age of 17, graduated in the Navy, and I served for 20 years as a commissioned officer post graduation, retiring as a commander. My dad was incidentally also from the same academy, and he retired as a brigadier in the army. So we have a family tradition of being in the military and from the same academy. I pretty much was a surface warfare officer throughout my tenure in the Navy. I had the opportunity to serve and command a detached boat squadron on an island. Did some fun stuff throughout, as probably everybody else does. And I have done a lot of expeditions in the Navy. I was fortunate again to get opportunities to lead expeditions, mostly river and ocean going expeditions, sailing expeditions, river crossings. and fun stuff like that. I was an instructor at the Center of Leadership and Behavior Studies at the Naval Academy and the Naval College of Engineering. Uh, Pretty much, I retired in 2019 prematurely. Decided to uh, start my career as an EMT with the idea of becoming a wilderness medic. Eventually got my paramedic and now work for a Canadian ambulance as a paramedic, and I'm still pursuing my wilderness paramedicine as well. I'm also doing my a form candidate with the Medicine Society, which our college at Malta is also an affiliate of, and we also run classes on wilderness medicine, and we have a student interest group which I am a part of, where we run monthly lectures which also give form credit. So that's me, Aebhric.
And you did some diving into Navy as well. So you're a subservice as well as surface warfare.
Yes, I learned to dive in the Navy. That's when I got my ship's diving officer's certification. Pretty much.
You've got to do some diving in Malta, mate.
Yes, for sure.
So Vish, tell me about what Remembrance Day means to you, or what does your military service mean for you? What did you get out of this, or what did it change in you, and what how do you look back on that as in your life path?
Well, to start with Remembrance Day, I remember Remembrance Day in school. When I was a kid in school, we used to have the 2 minutes of silence, uh, and we used to call it Armistice Day those days. And it was a feeling of profound, a very deep feeling that you just, as a high school student or as a middle school student, you just kept silent for 2 minutes for something which you had not seen, but you remembered it. It can kind of gave you that feeling that it was something of great importance. And of course, like I said, my father was in the military as well. Coming from that background, we always had uh, people whom you would lose in combat or in peacetime as well. It was always something which you had to be very mindful of and careful about how you displayed that emotion. And when I say careful, I mean some people get carried away with their emotions and take it to another extreme. So it's always been a huge part, having it meant keeping it as a solemn occasion and remembering the fallen, as I say, um, every every year. And we also have in India, we also have different remembrance days based on the conflicts that we've been in, which we celebrate in some ways. We celebrate the fallen. So it's always been a very important part of my life. The Not just this particular Remembrance Day, but Remembrance Day as a whole for our fallen comrades. I'm sure you've had that as well, different days for the unit that you've served in.
Do you have any other thoughts before we close for this interview?
No, I like I said, it's Remembrance Day to me and all other military Remembrance Days. Not just November 11th, but all other Remembrance Days for me are a very solemn event. And even though it might be for the Great War and for the other conflicts, I always reflect on the times I have been with my comrades who are no longer with us, and reflect upon how their life influenced uh, us and how we still celebrate them, and we talk to each other, and that's a great thing for us, to have that support and talk to each other about what's going on. It's also a way to connect at that particular time. So we might
Roger.
get away, but it's a good time to connect and reflect on how things were and how we are. So it's a good support system as well.
I agree. Thanks, Vish, for your thoughts.
Thank you.
So Eric Holmstrom is on our faculty. He has been teaching for us for quite some time. He has specialized in the tropical medicine courses that he teaches for us, and he's developing our prolonged field care and the austere emergency care programs for the college. So, Eric, tell me a bit about yourself and about your service.
So, Aebhric, first of all, happy to be asked to do this interview with you. My background is I'm an EMT from Norway. Been working EMT as a paramedic for about 30 years, civilian and military. I am a flight paramedic certified from the US and in Norway. Currently, I'm retired from the military. Did that this January to go out and do more civilian medicine, austere and critical care medicine, working with CoROM, for example. But I was asked to do a project on the side, which is revamping the critical care air transport education for the Norwegian military. So that's basically what I'm doing these days.
So you hit the ground running. Like there's no rest for the wicked with you, is it? You've been just as busy now as when you were in the service.
Yeah. So the thing was, I was planning to take some time off after I have to tell the people that are listening in that the reason why I'm at CoROM is, of course, that I met you guys when I was in charge, or I was the NCO for next in command for putting up the NSOCOM in Europe at the ISDC in Germany. So we actually put up in 2016 the first NATO-approved Special Operation Combat Medic course in Germany. And you guys were down there to teach the TropMed portion of that course, and I really enjoyed what you guys were doing. And I was also so lucky to be invited by you guys to teach in Tanzania for a month on some TTEMS courses down there.
And paramedic?
Beg your pardon? Yeah, yes, of course,
well.
it was part of the paramedic program. And basically, we talked about doing some more of that, and then unfortunately, COVID hit, and everything was put on hold. So by this year, I hope, or early next year, I hope to be finished with a diploma study in tropical medicine and hygiene by London School of Hygiene and Tropical Nursing, and hopefully you will invite me down to Tanzania and Malta to teach some more for you guys.
Definitely. Definitely going to have you back down again. So this is a discussion on military service and the upcoming. So for the U.S., U.K., EU, it's this Friday is Remembrance Day or Veterans Day. So and I just heard that Norway is a bit different. So what does Veterans Day in Norway mean, and what does Veterans Day mean for you?
Well, so Norway is a little bit different because we in 10 years, we go back 10 years, we didn't have any Veterans Day, or the people who served outside of Norwegian borders after the Second World War was not so much, how should I put it, supported by the government. We went down, did some tours in Lebanon, in Bosnia, and other countries, and came back and was back to civilian jobs. So there was basically not the people who was in the regular army going abroad doing service. 10 years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, that changed. So now the government is more on board. But we have our Veterans Day in the same day as our Liberation Day from the Second World War, which is the 8th of May. So we celebrate those two together, the Liberation Day and the Veterans Day. And every big city and also small towns has their own celebration on that day, and also it's a holiday and a day off for most of the people. So we have in Oslo, where I'm basically working as an EMT these days, we have this big parade on the old fortress at Akershus Festning, where we have also what you call it, giving out medals for people who deserves it for special services, and also for people who has done special things abroad and in Norway.
Do you have any final thoughts on military service?
No, the only thing I can conclude this with is that everybody should have a trip in the military, and I strongly support conscript. My son didn't know what to do after college. So luckily he went to the military for 1 year, and he came back a total different guy. He actually managed to wash his own clothes and keep his room tidy. And I think everybody will have a benefit of having a year in the military.
So next I'll be talking with Winston. Winston DeMello is one of the founders of the college, and he's been a mentor to me for almost 15 years now. Winston, tell me about yourself and about your service.
Well, first of all, thank you for asking me to talk on this podcast. It's on a subject that's very dear to me, mainly because of my military service. I joined the army in 1976 as an undergrad, basically taking a medical cadetship to pay my way through medical school. I did my house jobs at the Cambridge Military Hospital in Aldershot, and then I found myself 3 years later as a regimental medical officer to the Queen's Regiment when the Falklands War started nearly 40 years ago this summer. And I guess the first sort of impact that the Poppy Appeal or the Poppy Day brought it home to me was when my ex-boss, Captain Dent, lost her husband in the Falklands. And I'd known Phil as socially. He was part of the parachute regiment. So that was, I guess, my first time when it really brought it home to me about what it was like being in the military and serving, being a serviceman or woman, and the possibilities of wounding and death. So that was really the first personal memory, and for a few years after that, I know Captain Dent would be present at the Royal Albert Hall, representing the widows, and then she brought along her son, and her son later joined the parachute regiment.
That's a tribute to his dad, isn't it?
It is.
Wow.
And then I guess the next time I had sort of 4 operational tours: Northern Ireland in the late 80s, which was working in a hospital. It wasn't on the ground. And then in 1991, I was a part of the first field surgical team that was mobilized to the Gulf, serving with the U.S. Air Force. Fortunately, where we were located at Tabuk, there weren't many casualties. So it wasn't a very eventful time for that reason. And then I was serving with the American Army in Kosovo during 9/11, and seeing the Twin Towers come down whilst we were dealing with a mass casualty situation was quite a bizarre situation. And my colonel, Colonel Lambert from Boston, asked me to take a patient in a Humvee ambulance to Pristina, and he chose me. And as he explained, you are married, you have a grown-up son, and that is why I've chosen you. And when I got back after quite a horrendous journey, a very hostile journey, he was still waiting at the gate, waiting for my return. And over a cup of coffee, he just sort of tried to explain his reasons for selecting me over the younger members of the team.
That's leadership, though, isn't it?
It is. And then finally, the trip to Afghanistan, that in 2010, was probably the most profound for me. Where in just one day, I had 3 deaths on the operating table.
Wow.
All 3 19 years old. One was an American from New York Bronx. The other was a Jewish boy from Texas, and the third one was a Hispanic from Florida. and they were all 19. After the cases were dealt with as part of the audit cycle, they were thought to be dead on arrival, but we went through the process of going through the resuscitation because the medics who brought these boys in had worked very hard. It would be very demoralizing not to
Of
do so.
course, yeah.
But I found myself in this that horrific morning with tears running down my face, and I could see the padre and the matron at the end of the big theatre complex. And it only dawned me then the reasons for my emotional state was the fact my son happened to be 19 at the time.
Mm.
And so I just sort of tried to imagine what it was like for a military official knocking on the door to inform the parents that their son won't be coming home. So I guess that was when it really brought it home, because I had a son. I had 3 deaths on the table, which was, you know, as many deaths I've had on the table in 30 years of anesthetic practice.
Wow.
So it was quite a horrific emotional upheaval for me.
Mm.
So that's I guess the sort of now that I'm retired, I sit back, I support the poppy appeal, but in times of solitude, I do reflect on the devastation that these injuries and deaths that occur to our servicemen and women, and it kind of makes you sad and proud. I know that doesn't sound a good combination, but I can only express it in that way.
Mm.
There's pride in having taken part, but also some sadness that it involves people's lives and people's quality of life if they survive the injuries.
Of course, the mixed feelings when you come across that, and having to deal with death as well as service. Sometimes they're intertwined. So, what does Veterans Day mean for you, Winston?
Well, just by coincidence, this year's occasion, I'll be lecturing on burns at Manchester, and the staff who knew of my military background shifted the timing of my lecture from 11 o'clock to 11:15 so that I could be on my own, paying my respects to those who've departed. So I feel very privileged that they've given me that courtesy. But I think and I think this is why I find CoROM very rewarding, is that the people we train, we are training them to save life in these kind of scenarios. But as you know, recently I've concentrated on palliation. For those who are mortally wounded, providing them a good death, for want of a better word. It's not just how long you live; it's how well you live in those circumstances. And I think and pray for our graduates and our trainees who are serving in hostile parts of the world, like Ukraine. I think of them, I pray for them, and for me, the college is a network of mutual support. Being able to offer any help, whether it's just a talk, whether it's just a conversation, or whether it's just an email. I feel now that the next generation have taken on the baton, and the older generation need to support them in any way they can. And I think CoROM does that for that special group of people who are fortunate, or we are fortunate to have in our college.
It's passing the baton, isn't it? That we've done our service and we've done our time in the wards, and now it's up to you and me and the other seasoned CoROM faculty to pass on what we know and hopefully pass on the passion that we have for service. And it's not just military service. We have about 10 graduates at the moment working in Ukraine as medics, and they are serving, aren't they? Even though they're not in the military.
Exactly. Yeah. That distinction between whether you're in uniform or you're out of uniform is just it's the same thing. They have the same needs. They have the same requirements. They have the same emotional and vulnerabilities as anyone in uniform. Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
And they're giving, some are giving the ultimate sacrifice.
Yes,
for the freedom.
And that is why the Poppy appeal is so special, because it isn't just those that have served in the military. It's all the other people, whether it's the police, whether it's the ambulance service, whether it's the Coast Guards or whatever. There is a huge amount of people that are not in uniform that also contribute so much to the effort of keeping the world safe.
Thank you, Winston. Appreciate your thoughts and your experiences with what it means to be a veteran, to what it means to serve, and you bring a lot of that ethos to the college, and I appreciate it.
Thank you, Aebhric. You're very kind.
We have heard from a few of our faculty about service. Winston mentioned that this is not about military service only. There are far more civilians who serve their communities than are in the military service. This could be a public health nurse in the remote areas of Africa. It could be a paramedic working a double shift on an ambulance in order to cover for an unwell partner. Service comes in so many flavors and so many opportunities. I created CoROM as a nonprofit to serve, to give paramedic students the skills and experience to enable them to serve within their own communities. CoROM also directly serves, such as the Kilimanjaro region of Tanzania, where we provide direct donations and research projects. I published this podcast on the 11th hour, on the 11th day of the 11th month. It is Remembrance Day. It is also Veterans Day, depending on which side of the pond you're on. It is a day to think about the people who serve. It is a day to be thankful for that service. A service that enhanced the communities close at hand, as well as enhancing communities that we'll never see, such as communities at war in Ukraine. Today, there are people serving and protecting communities in Ukraine. There are people serving and protecting communities in every country of the world they serve. And on this day, I appreciate their service.
This has been a presentation from the College of Remote and Offshore Medicine Foundation. If you would like to earn CPD credit for this podcast, you can join the Council of Members. Being a member of the college gives you free CPD credits, free access to the virtual field guide, and discounts on our e-learning courses. You can join the team on the college website, which is CoROM, CoROM, CoROM.org.